So I want to welcome everyone viewing us to this session on behalf of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. We try to hold these educational sessions with our elected and other leaders to talk about some of the current issues. So we have with us tonight the Ward 3 DC Councilmember Mary Cheh, and as we were just talking before the program, she represents Ward 3. Our association really spreads over wards 3 and 4. So there's some few issues that involve only one ward or another, but we're going to proceed on the discussion here on the idea that we can discuss any issues really involving the district government, whatever ward they're in, and we'll see what our council member has to say about this. So we have a bunch of questions that people have submitted from our group and that I have, and we're just sort of going to go through them, but we have the capability of asking other questions. So if any of you, and I'll repeat this several times during the meeting here, that if any of you out there have additional questions or questions we might not cover, go into the chat function and send them in, and we will try to add them to the list again as much as we can get to in 1 hour here. So that's our general plan for the evening. And Mary, before we start going into questions, I think we've told you that a lot of them are pretty obvious things we want to ask, such as about the vaccine, about the comprehensive plan, about schools in the district, and about helping small businesses, other issues. Do you want to make any general statement at the beginning, or should we just go into these questions individually?
No, given the time frame, let's just launch.
Okay, and could you remind us, someone asked either which committee or committees you head either now or which you are likely or sure to be heading in the next session of the council, just so we have that information.
Okay, well, currently I'm the chair of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, which includes a number of other agencies as well. And energy is within Department of the Energy and Environment, but it's also the Department of Public Works, the DMV, and some other ones,
Right.
But Transportation and the Environment is the name of the committee. Now, all of us serve on other committees. I serve on Judiciary, Health, and Economic Development, I believe. And you raise a curious point about what will happen, because we have to have reassignment to committees every 2 years. And that will happen at an organization meeting of the council, probably on January 5th. And there's a lot of jockeying now about committee assignments and that sort of thing. What the chairman has as operating principles, number one, if you're new to the council, you don't get a committee to chair. You're on committees, but you have to, get acclimated. And so that would be Janice George, that would be Brooke Pinto, and that would also be, there's a third person, but I can't remember. In any case, so then the rest of it has to be shared among us. The chairman's second general point is that he likes continuity. So he likes people to stay with what they have because they've developed expertise, et cetera. But there has to be some switching because, for example, Councilmember Grasso headed the Education Committee and he's going off. So something has to be done about that. And there are a lot of rumors flying around. I was speaking to the chairman just like maybe half an hour ago. And I asked him, I said, I've been hearing this rumor and that rumor. He said, they're all rumors. I haven't made any final decisions. So I can't tell you exactly what committee I might have come January.
Okay, that's fine. But it's transportation and these other issues now, and we don't know for sure next year. That sets the stage here. Why don't we start? The big question on a lot of people's minds right now is obviously the pandemic and the vaccine. And I don't know how deeply you have gone into this or can state this, but if we assume everyone watching this lives in the district now, do we have any specific idea right now who will get the vaccine and when, who in categories?
We have some idea. And first of all, let me just tell people, and maybe somebody could put it in the chat. You can always go to coronavirus.dc.gov. Okay, coronavirus.dc.gov. There's all kinds of information up there about many things. Okay, but in terms of the vaccine, that is managed by the Department of Health, DC Health, and we have an initial allotment of about 6,800 doses from Pfizer. They were delivered to 6 sites in the district, essentially our hospitals. These sites are going to partner with yet other hospitals and healthcare providers because they're the first, and first responders, they're the first to get the vaccinations, and these have already begun. Now, because they were allocating the number of vaccines, in the first set and second set, based upon residency, the truth is we have about 85,000 people, generously defined, who are in the healthcare space. And so to allocate it based on residence sort of shortchanges us because about 75% of our healthcare folks come from outside of the district. Now, Virginia and Maryland have seen the inequity of that and the difficulty of that. So they're going to send us about 8,000 additional vaccines to vaccinate their people who work in our healthcare areas. We don't know how many we're going to receive in each allotment after that, okay? But or when exactly they're going to arrive. But we assume it's going to start on a weekly or even a bi-weekly basis. And so the plan is, by the way, it'll be supplemented, by the way, significantly if Moderna, and I participated in the Moderna NIH trial. So I've been vaccinated since August. But Moderna will probably get its approval this week. If that's true, then we'll be getting, they can, send out many millions of more doses, around the world. So that'll be an additional option. And one of the things about Moderna, unlike Pfizer, it doesn't have to be kept in those extremely cold temperatures. So we'll see about that. Now, the plan about, the hierarchy of how this goes, healthcare workers, again, broadly defined, people in the healthcare setting, which would include people in long-term facilities, home health workers, pharmacists, for example. Then after that, they're thinking of nursing home residents, law enforcement, teachers, childcare workers, those who live in what they call congregate settings, like shelters, DC jail, frontline workers, people, for example, in grocery stores and that sort of thing, people older than 65, and those with high risk health conditions. Now, we have to keep in mind that those categories are somewhat flexible. It doesn't mean that one whole category has to be filled before they move on to the next. It might be, in tandem or sort of simultaneous, but that's kind of the hierarchy that they have in mind. And what we're being told is that if you are not over 65, you're not a healthcare worker, you're not in a high risk condition, you're not a frontline worker, you're not any of the categories that I mentioned, the vaccines for those folks, as this rolls out, are probably not going to be available till March or April. Now, with the vaccines, as you may know, I had my first in August, and then you have to go back. With Moderna, it was about a month later, but Pfizer's about 21 days. So it's a 2-shot vaccination. And when the time comes for, the larger group to be vaccinated, DC Health is already working with providers like pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens, primary care doctors, things of that nature, almost like the flu. And you'll be able to go to any of these providers to get your 2 shots, and it's free. So all I can say to people is, when it's available to you, get it for all of us. Get it for yourself, get it for your family and friends, get it for all of us. In fact, the the mayor asked me to do a PSA on that point, which I did, because it's really important that we get full coverage. So that's pretty much the picture. Things may change. Maybe we'll get things sooner than later. But right now, it's healthcare workers, people in the healthcare settings, and that's being done principally through hospitals.
Okay, so I think we got the general picture, and I infer from your comment that DC Health, which is a local government agency, is making these basic decisions, correct? About
Yes, they're in charge. They're managing it.
okay, fine. And someone asked already here on our chat function, how are individuals going to find out about all this? I am inferring, but you can tell it that they should keep, if they don't see it in the news media, that they should be watching this website that you alluded to, correct? We
Yeah.
aren't going to get individual notifications that we are
No,
eligible.
it'll be widely advertised. Again, coronavirus.dc.gov, and if you backslash and put in vaccine, but if you want to just play around with the whole website, has lots of interesting information there. So it's coronavirus.dc.gov/vaccine. And I also have a thing I put out, an update. You have to say you want it. I just don't send it out because I can't assume that people want to get it as an email. But my updates pretty much try to keep people informed. And then we also put the update on the listservs. So that the coronavirus.dc.gov site and the press in general, you'll know where we are pretty much as we go along. But again, it's something of a moving target. So they may, add some groups ahead of other groups, that sort of thing. But we'll know. I think we'll know. I don't want people to be too anxious. I have been getting a couple of emails from people. Is there a sign-up sheet? Things of that nature. No, not yet. When it's generally available, you'll be able to go. You know how you go out for your flu shot? You go to CVS. They'll have a sign, flu shots. They'll have COVID shots or whatever they have. You can just go in and get them. So that's pretty much how it's going to be. It says, somebody just sent me something. You want to put that in the chat? Somebody from my office just sent me something to tell you how, if you want to sign up for my updates, how you could do that if you want. So he's going to put that in the chat. Are there any other questions about
Well,
vaccines?
we have a couple. We don't want to spend too much time here. We only have a total of an hour, but there was a question about testing, saying that the number of DC residents tested is about 335,000. And do we know how many unique residents have been tested and what that number is per month? I don't know if you would know that off the top of your head. So.
No, I don't know, but I do know that we've been concerned, like the surrounding jurisdictions, but we've been actually better than the surrounding jurisdictions. Not just testing, but also, what we're finding out in terms of the number of people who have tested positive, and then of course the capacity that we have in our hospitals for people who have to go to the hospital. But I would like to do a little shout out for our mayor. I think, the mayor has been very careful and cautious and has acted in a deliberate fashion. And I think, her leadership during this has been excellent. And I think that accounts for, and our general citizenry, being responsive to wearing a mask and keeping distance and so on. We've been pretty good in terms of our statistics. We suffer, however, I have to say, from many, many people coming into the district, which is First Amendment rights and everything, but they come in without masks. They come in not following the rules. And I think the large number of people, though, who have added to our numbers are people who are getting together in large numbers, their family with Thanksgiving and things of that kind. So we're doing okay. We're doing okay. And I feel with these vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, whomever else, I just have this like feeling of the cavalry coming over the hill. And we have to hold on and we have to do the right thing. But there's a way out of this. We can defeat this pandemic as we go forward. But people have to get the shot. As soon as they can get it, they should go get it.
Okay, I think I'm going to move on to other topics here. We can come back to the vaccine if we get other questions in the chat, but I think we've covered a lot of material here. I'm going to go on to a completely different topic, namely education and the schools. And this may not be your specialty, but I know you know a lot about this. And I'm talking mainly about the public schools here because we
Right.
can't speak for all of the private schools. But a couple of related questions. One, do you have any insight into when we are going to be able to actually send students in mass back to the DC public schools, or is that an open question? And then we have some specific questions regarding this issue I mentioned earlier, Lafayette School, which I know is in Ward 4, but the students live in Ward 3 and 4. There is a plan right now, and this goes to the question of overcrowding in schools. So I'd like you to discuss that about, again, when we're back to normal, about overcrowding in Ward 3 and 4 schools. But there's a specific proposal that because of this, we may have to move the pre-K from Lafayette across Rock Creek Park, and there's a current debate about that, which is in progress. We aren't going to know the answer tonight, I don't think, but could you discuss those two issues first? What do we know about reopening, if we can say anything, and what can we say about overcrowding of our local schools and the implications of that?
Okay, well, term two for DCPS, which started November 18th, was the point at which the schools began to reopen. We haven't, in any sense, resumed traditional in-person teaching. And although the DCPS plan was to do something like that sooner rather than later, negotiations with the Washington Teachers Union have, to say the least, their ups and downs. And negotiations fell through at one point when looked like we were somewhere close to an agreement. But now they're back, I think, at the bargaining table, which is a good thing, but there's not an agreement just yet. What schools have started is something called CARES classrooms. It has about 8 to 10 students in these classrooms. They're primarily for special needs and at-risk students. And other students are just continuing their virtual learning at home. The CARES classrooms in Ward 3 are in Key and Murch. And there was supposed to be another one at Eaton, but that was delayed because of availability. Now, these are not like in-class learning generally. What they are is there's somebody who's like a proctor, or I don't know what we would call them, but there's a person in the classroom. The students come into the classroom. I went on tours of our classrooms to see, how they've put the desks, where they're going to put the room, if a student develops symptoms, and, just looking generally at things. And it's modest. It's very, very modest what's happening now, but that's what that is. Now, DCPS hopes to open schools more broadly coming in term 3, which is February 1st. And although I forget whether it was at a hearing or what I was on, although the chancellor said, well, it doesn't really depend on getting an agreement with the Washington Teachers Union, I don't see how that could happen without that agreement on staffing. But assuming that they can get to an agreement, and they are working on it, then the plan for term 3, February 1st, looks to be what the objective is. The chancellor has said to parents that they should assume that that's going to happen. That's the goal, that's the vision, that's where they're heading. Now, DCPS has also done something that parents should know about if they don't know about it already. They've created these reopened community core at each school. It's a group that's to help lay out and assess plans for reopening at that school. So they're going to meet from early December. They've started a first meeting already, and they're supposed to help lay out these plans. It's made up of parents, teachers, school staff, community members, and with older students, the students themselves. So that's important because it's, I hope, going to give everyone confidence that each particular school has been reviewed for its safety and for the ability of the school really to have in-person teaching. Now, if anybody wants to find out about these groups that are going to do this planning for each individual school, I have another link that maybe we could put in the chat, which is, if somebody could do this, https:// and it's coming in from my trusty chief of staff. And it's dcpsreopenstrong.com. Okay. So if you want to find out about that, and if you want to perhaps be a part of that, please go to that site and follow up from there. Okay. Now, in October, early November, I went around to our Ward 3 schools to check their readiness. We made lists of things that we wanted to have addressed. Most of them have been, but some have not. And so, and members of the community were in on these tours as well. So if we can get these school-based groups going, if we can get an agreement with the teachers union, the commitment is to open it for term 3, which again would be February 1st. Now, a lot of things can happen. Maybe there isn't an agreement. Maybe, the surge is extraordinary and too problematic. Maybe this and maybe that, but that's the plan, and that's what everyone is aiming at. Now, if you want regular updates, again, if you want to subscribe either to my update or to a newsletter that I put out, I think that was put in the chat already. So that's one source of information about that. And that's where we are. There, I mean, I have to acknowledge there's a good deal of uncertainty, and there's a yearning really on the part of parents and everyone for more information. Forgive me for saying this, but I think that it's true. We often see where DCPS makes decisions from on high, and then they go out to the community to hear their feedback, but they've already made the decision. They're calling the shots. I think they have to do more bottom up and more, transmission of information as we go, because, my children are grown. I have a grandchild, and, when you start thinking about it, on this individual family basis, you want your child back in school. That's where they learn best, but you want to be confident that it's safe. So we need more information, and we need more engagement for parents, so that when they make that decision, they can do it with confidence. So that's where we are, with schools. Are there any other questions in the chat?
Well, what about just briefly, the other question
Lafayette.
About overcrowding and
Yeah.
Lafayette?
Well, we've had overcrowding in Ward 3 schools for many years, and have been thinking of all sorts of plans about how to deal with it. And we've come up with some, but it's kind of, it's not a sufficiently comprehensive plan, but it's happening to some extent in Ward 4 too, with respect to Lafayette. And you're right, that's not just Ward 4 students, it's also Ward 3 students. here's the situation. Because of the overcrowding, there was a suggestion. This is not decided, or at least I'm told that it is not decided. There was a suggestion that maybe take pre-K and K and move them to a facility on Military Road that the council allocated money to purchase. That would take the pressure off Lafayette for the other grades. That is, as I understand it, what the plan is because of overcrowding. Now, I also understand that there was a presentation to the ANC. If there are any ANC members on here, they can confirm. I was not present, so I don't know what the discussion was. But it's my understanding that in this case, contrary to perhaps the usual behavior, a decision has not been made. It is really the case of going to the community and asking them, given that there's overcrowding and that this is a possible solution, what do people think about it? And my understanding is a decision won't be made until the end of January. So there'll be a lot of time here for people to weigh in and say what they think about that. And again, the idea is to take pre-K and K and move them to this other facility on Military Road that, again, came available, and then the council put money toward its purchase.
Yeah, you're right on the summary. I saw the ANC meeting and they did discuss this. And I think it only applies the proposal to pre-K and not K, but of course anything could be changed. So I'm inferring that you at this moment you don't have a personal position on this.
No, but just with the other schools that I have dealt with, the overcrowding issue is serious, and we have to think of solutions. This would be just one that's been thrown out there. And, I'm going to ask, I know I have some staff listening. So is it just pre-K or is it pre-K and K? I think what they want to do with that Military Road facility is make it an early child learning center. I had thought of that as a proposal over here with this sort of outpost building that the lab school is using on Foxhall. And, now we're going to go in a different direction. The mayor has put in money to have an addition put on that would take, additional lower school students. In addition, the Georgetown Day School had a lower and middle school on MacArthur Boulevard that they've put up for sale because they've moved their entire campus over off Wisconsin Avenue. And although it's not a done deal, and it may never be a done deal, I put money in the budget so that if it became a possibility, and if we wanted it, and if the terms were right, we could purchase that. Exactly how that will affect Key and Mann elementary schools over, more directly in Ward 3, I'm not sure, but we're always casting about for other possibilities. With Wilson High School, for example, for a long time, there's been an idea that maybe we could take the senior class and use some of the underutilized buildings right there at UDC and have the senior class there all together. They might even take, dip into some college level courses. It's right on a subway. And maybe that would enable, Wilson High School to have a breather too from its overcrowding. So there are a lot of things out there, a lot of possibilities out there, but they all have to be explored because we have serious overcrowding. With Key, I had wanted to, they're in trailers now, and I had wanted to take that space over there, same with Stoddard, and build additions on those schools. But that seems to have given way now because the mayor has determined that an addition on the building that the lab school is using is a better choice. I'm not so sure, but here again, we have to figure out what's possible, what we can do, but we have to we have to do something.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to move on to another topic in a minute here, but I just wanted to relate that a couple of the people on chat, and I know this reflects other people in the community. There's a petition out there, I think, that has about 250 signatures. A lot of people I think you can infer this, do not like this plan of moving pre-K about 2 miles away from the school across the park. So you may not be, you're not ready to make a commitment, and you don't have to tonight, but I'm just relating that at least some of our people are hoping that eventually you will oppose this particular plan. Again, you don't have to take a stand right this minute.
Well, no, but let me say this, you know, I don't think that that's the wisest thing, especially it may separate some families. And what we need to do though is we need to explore what an alternative plan might look like. I'd like to be able to get behind something that makes sense for Lafayette and put this other one on the shelf. But we'll have,
Okay.
you know, we'll have to see.
Okay, well, this is going to be a continuing topic in the near future. I'm going to change the topic now to another big question for our area that goes beyond the schools, namely the so-called comprehensive plan for the district that I think you will confirm is now under consideration by the council. And the question, again, this may not be a so-called done deal, but the question is that one issue, one of many issues in this plan, talks for a call for greater housing density, population density zoning across DC. So we're particularly interested, being in your ward, about if this goes through, how that will affect our ward, or well, your ward 3, and particularly the Chevy Chase area. But of course, there are several different questions here, and I'm going to open this up and you can discuss any that you want. We have Connecticut Avenue, a commercial area. Some people have proposed that also accommodate in the future low income housing, other kinds of housing. There are other people who talk about so-called upzoning across some of the residential areas in our district. So again, a lot of questions here. Can you tell us what we know about this comprehensive plan? And by the way, I am also interjecting here. We have a plan that you're very familiar with. I think about having a so-called small area plan just for our business district and the surrounding areas. So there are a lot of different questions. Can you help us sort out what the implications of all this are?
Sure. By way of kind of background though, there's been a lot of development and discussion and public engagement, you know, tremendous public engagement in the formulation of the Office of Planning's draft of the comprehensive plan. As far back as fall 2016, it started this very open process with these town halls, and then, you know, a solicitation for proposed amendments, et cetera. And so once there was a draft plan from the Office of Planning, once that was published, there was further work with ANCs, and official resolutions came forward, individual responses came forward. And so all of that has been, you know, the background and the influences of different degrees on what we have now. Now, the plan is now over at the council, and the council held 2 hearings on something called the framework element, and now there'll be 2 more days of hearings. There were already 2 days of hearings, but there may be more hearings about the plan itself. And so it'll probably be voted on. It can't be voted on this period because we had our last legislative meeting. Is today Tuesday? No, yesterday. And so, and I personally have met with multiple groups to talk to them about their ideas. So now it's in our hands, and there is in the plan. There's a plan for increased density along the commercial corridors which would include Chevy Chase, Cleveland Park, Forest Hills, where politics and prose is, Van Ness, where Howard Law School is, Woodley Park, Cathedral Commons, the old Fannie Mae site, Tenleytown, Friendship Heights, Spring Valley. To put this in other words, it means density increases along the commercial corridors, Connecticut, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. There are no proposals to increase density in residential neighborhoods. Now, and remember that this is just the plan. The actual zoning and permission for different zoning would have to come through the zoning commission, but this sets the background. All of those changes along the corridors are meant to incorporate these mixed use developments, meaning commercial on the bottom, residential on the top. And it's the mixed use planning is designed or opens the door for new affordable housing while not changing our existing single family neighborhoods. There was a proposal, an idea that people were shopping around, which I opposed, to do away with zoning for single residences. I thought that was a little crazy, but it hasn't gotten any traction, happily. So it would be along the corridors. It would be to use the areas along the corridors to have mixed use, commercial on the bottom, housing on the top, and I'm going to quote from the framework element: the designation of moderate density residential, which is what this would include primarily, is used to define neighborhoods generally, but not exclusively, suited for row houses as well as low-rise garden apartment complexes. It applies to areas characterized by a mix of single-family homes, 2 to 4 unit buildings, row houses, low-rise apartment buildings. In some neighborhoods with this designation, there may also be multi-story apartments, many built decades ago when they were zoned for denser uses or not zoned at all. And if I could describe this, because I have little snippets here, in a section on the west side of the commercial strip where Blue 44 is, to change that from low density commercial to mixed use low density commercial and moderate density residential. And then the area that would change, somewhat nearby there, the commercial strip from low density commercial to mixed use low density commercial and moderate density residential. And then also up in your area, I'm more in Forest Hills, the area where the community center, where we have the community center and the library, to change that from local public facilities to mixed use local public facilities and low density commercial and moderate density residential. Now, in that regard, we might say, well, what does that mean? And I think that it means to permit there to be housing on top of those public buildings. And perhaps, I don't know if it would fit at all. This is just allowing something, if possible, if it fits, to have some commercial on the first floor on that block. Now, you had mentioned about a small area plan, and I think that that's important here. Chevy Chase is designated for a small area plan, and I was really happy to be able to include money in the budget to fund that process in this fiscal year, ensuring that the subsequent development there, the reconstruction of the community center, the library, whatever private development comes, is done in a coherent, cohesive sort of community supported fashion. And by a small area plan, what you do is you designate the area, this would be the Chevy Chase area, and it would be a process with the community to identify things that they want to see, to identify the shape and look of things in that small area. And once there's an agreement on that, that would actually be adopted as legislation for Chevy Chase. So I think that what we have is reasonable increase in density along the corridors and with a special look in Chevy Chase at having a small area plan to further refine what that will look like. So,
Okay, so obviously a lot of this is still to be discussed, a lot of the details, but I think you're giving us a signal that a lot of these things could happen in our area in the years ahead. We had a specific question here about the any limitations on height of buildings. I assume that's standard across the district, or is it not standard?
no, in fact, they figure it out by something called FAR. And Jonathan, if you're on there, could you tell us in words that people understand instead of the FAR formula, what height of buildings we may have that may be different from what we have now? Jonathan, are you there? Hello? I'm waiting to hear from
Well,
him.
he put a note on the chat saying absent a special agreement such as a P.
There it is. Thank you, Jonathan. That's what I was looking for. No
Okay,
more-
generally no more than 2 stories.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you, Jonathan. These people
Okay.
that are behind the curtain, and I don't get to see them.
right, okay. Well, I think that, again, there are a lot of issues here. That may be enough on that unless we get more questions. Another question that was submitted here is this, that in September, the mayor implemented programs to help small businesses, including what's called the Small Business Resiliency Fund and the Great Streets Retail Business Grant. Have any of these been awarded, or can you mention what the status of this is?
Okay, yes, I can. Applications for the Small Business Resiliency Fund and the Great Streets Retail Business Grant Fund closed on October 23rd, and we're awaiting further information from about the award, who got them, and when we get that information, we'll share it. But the district has also launched this $100 million bridge fund for restaurants, hotels, entertainment, and retail businesses. Restaurants, 35 million. The application for that is open. Retail, 15 million. The application for that is open. Entertainment, 20 million. Application opens on December 21st, not open yet. And hotels, 30 million, and the applications for that are closed. The funds under this bridge fund can be used for general operating expenses like payroll, rent, insurance, as well as COVID specific expenditures, weatherizing the outdoor space. And I'm going to give you another site so we can put it up. Businesses can apply at, again, coronavirus.dc.gov. That's the same, but it's /bridge fund. Okay, coronavirus.dc.gov /bridge fund. So if you're a business in the restaurant, retail, or entertainment space, not hotels anymore because the application for that is closed, go to that site and see about the application process.
Okay, I think that covers that issue. We have roughly 15 minutes left. I'm going to go back to a couple of the, we've covered the major issues that we wanted to ask about, but I'm going back to some of the questions on the chat about a couple of the issues we already discussed.
Okay.
One of them comments, and I'm paraphrasing here, this goes back on the density issue on Connecticut Avenue. One of our members commenting that any increased density is obviously going to have impacts on side streets such as parking and other issues. And this person says, I'm just quoting her, that we don't want our area of Connecticut to look like Van Ness. I'm not sure Van Ness is that terrible, but that's what this person says. So her basic question is, what exactly, can you define any further what the she used the phrase moderate density. I'm not sure that's the phrase you used, but what can you elaborate on one, as much as we can speculate right now on what density changes we might see? We know this all hasn't been decided yet, and it depends on zoning and particular proposals, but what could we see, any kind of major impact on population density in this area? And if so, what impacts might that have on other issues, services, transportation, parking, whatever?
Well, again, Chevy Chase would be moderate density, which is obviously lower than high and medium density. And we're talking about two-story buildings. And the aim is to increase density to some extent, but I hardly would compare it with Van Ness, which is high density. So right there, you can see that there's not an equivalence, but the aim is to increase density, to get more housing, and hopefully to get government funds to help some of this housing be affordable housing, which is one of the aims here. And I support that.
Okay, thank you. We have also a couple of more questions about this Lafayette situation, which you may or may not be able to address. A couple of people requesting specifically that would you participate in some kind of a meeting about this issue. And this person quotes a couple of our Board of Education members at another meeting tonight. I can't vouch for this. Fraser O'Leary and Ruth Wattenberg opposing this proposal, again, to move pre-K across the park. And another person, again, you might not be familiar with this, asked whether we could use, there's a major school in our area, the Episcopal School, which is at, I believe, Utah and Nebraska Avenue, has closed for its previous uses, and could we possibly use this for that? You may not be able to comment on individual locations, but I'm relating that from the chat here.
I'm happy to work with the Lafayette community and, see about this. And I'll just say, I know how they feel, in that when we were thinking about, and we are doing it now, modernizing John Eaton, and the DCPS said in the year or two that the students are away from that school, that they were going to go to some school over on N Street. I said, that's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, because it's not appropriate to bus kids or transport kids that far away from their homes. And I tried to move heaven and earth, and they didn't go over there. We got them a better place to go. So I'm going to take DCPS's word on this, at least at the moment. There's a small animal heading toward the camera. Don't be alarmed. But yes, I'm happy to work with the folks at Lafayette to see, what else can be done. I don't think, if I were a parent, I would be very enthusiastic about this either. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, but sure, I'm happy, and I'm in their corner. So we'll see what we can do.
Okay, well, I think we've covered that issue for now. Again, we have about 10 minutes left here, and I'm reminding people that anyone who has any last minute questions for Councilmember Mary Cheh, put them in the chat function, and I'll try to relate them. I had a couple of questions from people about things that don't involve our specific area, and you may or may not be able to comment, but in your transportation role, you probably can comment on this. So one of our members is concerned about the streetcar project on H Street, I think Northeast. It's saying this is, in her opinion, a wasteful thing to expand it, but again, it's not in our area. Can you at least give us a short answer on where that stands?
Well, in the last budget cycle, we did put in money to continue the streetcar over to Ward 7. And to make it something more viable than what it is now, this is too snarky, but some people have referred to it as, just a Disney ride up and down H Street. But it's more than that. But to make it actually be a more viable transportation option, and to open up transportation more in Ward 7, there's a lot to commend it. It is expensive. It's but essentially there would be sunk costs from what we've already done, and then there would be these capital costs to extend it. But the council, voted to add the money for the extension last time, and I suspect, but I don't know because of our budget constraints now, the streetcar doesn't divert any money from our operating expenses. It's paid for with bonds. It's, we borrow money in effect. And I think that the arguments of last time, and we did hear from people on both sides of the issue, the arguments last time to continue that extension, but no more, not the whole big thing, to Georgetown and all the rest of it, but just to, it's also a way for us to get some money from the federal government, which is always welcome, which is important for the replacement of the Benning Bridge over there. So I think that on balance, that extension is justifiable.
Okay, thank you. I have another change of topic here, but someone asked about a question we discussed extensively with Congresswoman Norton, namely about the prospects for DC statehood. But I'm going to expand that question into, we obviously have a new presidential administration coming in. We don't know at this moment how the Senate is going to turn out, but of course the House still has a Democratic majority. Can you specify or predict or speculate on any changes in the federal government coming up that will may either affect the DC statehood situation or more generally the district budget or situation at all? Congresswoman Norton, of course, talked about some budget riders that are always attempted, but you don't have to go into all that. But what changes in our relation to the federal government should we expect?
Okay, well, I will tell you that it can really hurt when you're not a state, and we saw that with the pandemic monies that were sent out to everybody. We were treated as a territory instead of as a state, and we got millions and millions and millions of dollars fewer than we would have otherwise been entitled to. It was really quite unfair. And so that's just one instance. But in terms of our legislation that has to go over, what happens is we pass a bill, it goes over to the mayor, assume she signs it, and then it has to sit in Congress for 30 days to see if both houses will pick it up and with resolutions basically overturn it. This hasn't happened much, but the other way that Congress can get us, we have to send our budget over there every year. And then if there are things that Congress doesn't like, because that they have to affirmatively approve it, they can just line item it out. And they've line itemed out a number of things over time. For example, funding for poor women's abortions. For years, they were lining out, giving clean needles to people so that they wouldn't spread HIV. And then finally, one year, we kept passing it, sending it over. They kept saying no. We passed it. One year, we sent it over, and they didn't do anything with it. But that's what we have to go through for our legislation, because under the Constitution, under Article 1, the Congress is the legislature entirely and completely for the District of Columbia. The only reason why we get to legislate at all is because Congress passed a statute creating what we have now, our Home Rule Act, and it's pursuant to that statute. But under that statute, Congress retains the ultimate authority over legislation for the District of Columbia. That would stop if we were a state. But right now, that's the regime that we have to operate under.
Apart from that, we don't know how that's going to turn out in the next Congress, but at least it's gotten to the House once. But
if we don't get the Senate then,
Right.
we're whistling in wind. And even if we did, there was a time, by the way, under President Clinton, for example, where we had a Democratic president, Democratic House, Democratic Senate. It's only 2 years, but and nothing happened. And even our own President Obama was not particularly helpful to the district. I had to lobby the White House to put the DC plates saying, taxation without representation. And when they did it? They did it during the second term, pretty much on the way out the door, in the last number of months. That was a modest thing to do. And President Obama was not really particularly concerned about the District of Columbia, which to me is one of the remaining major civil rights issues that we have.
Do we have any specific, based on what they have said, any specific expectations, positive or negative, from Joe Biden or Kamala Harris about this?
Well, the Democratic Party supports statehood. The Republican Party does not. And so, we have supporters, but we don't have enough to prevail unless we control both houses.
Right. Okay. We had another question on the list. We only have 5 minutes left here, so we're getting to the end. In fact, I'm going to say this is the last question, and then you can make a closing statement. But again, this question comes back to one of the areas we discussed like about 20 minutes ago, and you alluded to about the potential development on Upper Connecticut Avenue, where we have the community center and the library, and you mentioned the possibility of housing on top of this. And you may, this is something I think that has been postponed in the budget for a couple of years, but is it clear to you that we should try to develop that area as a comprehensive whole, not just talking about let's rehab this one building, but try to, that's sort of one major block in the area?
Yes, and that's what the small area plan will enable us to do. And by the way, one of the reasons why development there was postponed was in anticipation of the comprehensive plan and in anticipation of having a small area plan and having a more sort of coherent development of both the library and the community center. So, so that these things can be done together. So, we're not acting, bit by bit like that. And so, yes, the small area plan is going to be extraordinarily important for the area. And I think that that will be something that the people in Chevy Chase will be eager to participate in, and we will expect the community to participate in. That's what a small area plan is about.
Good. Well, we'll all look forward to discussions on that. Well, we're about out of time here, and we greatly appreciate your spending an hour with us. And we've covered, I think, lots of topics. Have we either forgotten anything that you want to say, or do you want to make a general statement to our members about our future cooperation on these or other issues that we haven't mentioned?
Well, we did cover, many of the big issues. I do think that going forward, a key thing for us is how quickly we can recover from the pandemic. There are some dire projections about the budget. I happen to think, maybe I'm just wishful thinking, I happen to think it won't be as terrible as, was perhaps originally projected. And I want to say something to folks so that they appreciate it. One of the reasons why the district has proven to be a bit more resilient than some other cities around the nation is because we have been, over the last 10 to 15 years, very, very careful in what we did with our budgets. We've been very careful to build up our reserves, very careful to make sure we had, a really robust rainy day fund. And because we've done all that, we've been able to pretty much, we can't do everything, but pretty much maintain services and that sort of thing. And I say that because sometimes there's a lot of talk about, well, we should spend down our reserves and we should do this and we should do. No. here's where it matters. And it's the reason why we have a AAA bond rating. It's the reason why when we have to borrow short term, we don't have to go out to the markets. We can actually borrow from our own funds. And so it's put us in a very, very strong position. But I want people to keep that in mind the next time down the road when folks are saying that we should spend down our reserves. I think we should keep our reserves robust and available for the rainy days, which now we have. So that's my final point about that.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Councilmember Cheh. We will try to post the recording of this on our website. And if any of you members or other attendees have follow-up questions, send them to us. I believe our email is president@chevychasecitizens.org, but we have our website, chevychasecitizens.org, and you can take a look at that and submit any questions. So we thank you. We look forward to working with you in the coming year. We hope after the pandemic is ended and we can deal a lot with these other issues. So thank you again, and we're going to adjourn this meeting now.
You're welcome,
Thank you
and thanks
very
for
much.
having me.
Thank you very much, Mary. And
Thank you guys for having me.
have a happy holiday.
You too. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.